throughout your career, you have made films about this nation, and it's always felt to me like each film was a prism on the nation, right? It was country music, it was jazz, it was baseball. Is the story of the American Revolution more foundational to all of those?
I think the American Revolution is the most important event since the birth of Christ. I will defend that. Period, full stop. It's certainly the most consequential revolution in history, as we say. It is, of course, the thing that inspires more than 2 centuries of other revolutions, but this is a big, big deal.
I saw you saying that somewhere else, that this was sort of the greatest event in human history.
Since the birth of Christ.
What makes it so?
If you look at the language of our most sacred documents, we say pursuit of happiness in the Declaration. We say a more perfect union. We are a nation in the process of becoming. This new thing that we're creating, not just a nation, but the idea of a citizen. Everybody before this had been subjects. Now you're a citizen, and that means you've got huge responsibilities. The founders are all desperately worried about whether there was enough virtue, and that was the word they used over and over again. So we say this is not just a clash between Englishmen over Indian land and taxes and representation, but a bloody struggle that would engage more than 24 nations, European as well as Native American, that also somehow came to be about the noblest aspirations of humankind.
You have had this American focus. It's been brilliant through all of these prisms, as we said. Why that focus? What is it about the American story that draws you?
You know, I'm a collector of quilts.
Yes, I'm looking around those here, and they're beautiful.
I've always loved them because my work involves sort of solving mysteries, going into something and learning as much as you can. And I sort of think the different stories together, woven together, make up a quilt. I've made films for the last 50 years about the U.S., but I've also made films about us. Mm-hmm. That is to say, that lowercase 2-letter plural pronoun, all of the intimacy of us and we and our, and all of the majesty and complexity and contradiction and even controversy of the U.S.
How has your perspective as the storyteller changed over this last half century?
The changes happen to me within each film project. Within the American Revolution story, though, like I'm still stunned at that it's a civil war. There are changes of sort of dominance between the British and their loyalist allies and the patriots, in which it is so violent and so vicious.
But of course, even within families, I mean, right? I mean, we can look at Ben Franklin and his son being the most obvious example, but that was told 1,000 times over.
This is the most important thing, is that civil war divides families. The brother against brother thing that got applied to the Civil War is so rare in the Civil War compared to what had happens in the Revolution. Franklin's own son, William, is the royal governor of New Jersey. He's deposed by patriots. He's in prison. This is a story that is repeated almost everywhere during the American Revolution.
By going back as a historian and the work of other historians who you admire, what's that value to us today to actually know what happened?
I don't know what we're afraid of. If your umpire's calling balls and strikes, yes, Babe Ruth and Reggie Jackson strike out a lot, but they also hit a lot of home runs. We understand that in our own lives and relationships, but we don't extend that in our politics or our media. Everything's a 1 or a 0. Even in my editing room downtown, we've got a little neon sign in cursive that says it's complicated. Because filmmakers, if a scene is working, you don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
But we're always finding information that undercuts the story, but it makes it better if you're willing to sacrifice what's a good story for what's a truer story.
Will it be able to help engage Americans talk in divided times, do you think?
I hope people say, which side would I be on? It's perfectly understandable to be a loyalist. It says, I live under the greatest system of government on earth. True, the British constitutional monarchy. My prosperity, my education, my health is all tied in with that. Why would I want to change that for some radical idea, right? I mean, 2 ministers are talking in Boston and said, who would you rather be led by, a tyrant 3,000 miles away or 3,000 tyrants a mile away? You know, I mean,
I like that.
And that's a really good question at the time of the revolution. It's a complicated dynamic, and you got to be willing. If you're going to share in the blessings of it, you got to be willing to stick through the whole story.
Today, as divided as we are, Americans seem to agree on one thing, which is 3/4 of us say that this nation used to be a good example of democracy and isn't. Is that thread actually, though, throughout our history?
There's something extraordinarily unique about our possibilities, about our story, that is so moving and sometimes really exhilarating, that you can feel suffused throughout the story of the revolution. On Lexington Green, on April 19, 1775, the chances of success against the greatest military power on earth are 0. 6 years later, 6.5 years later, it's 100%. I like the story of how that 0 goes to 100%. And we're still in that realm of possibility. We still have it within our power to take the energy of the revolution, the best of it, and make it and shape it for ourselves and our posterity. And that's our biggest responsibility. And then we will, as Lincoln predicted, live through all time.
Ken Burns, thank you so much.
Thank you.